Good morning everyone. I am Suhasini, MCOM final, MPM first grade college Karkala. I am explaining about foreign exchange risk hedging strategies, external future, forex future. Forex futures are standardized futures contracts to buy or sell currency at a set date, time and contract size. These contracts are traded at one of the numerous futures exchanges around the world. Unlike their forwards counterparts, futures contracts are publicly traded, non-customizable, and guaranteed against credit losses by an intermediary known as clearing house. What are forex futures? Forex futures are exchange traded currency derivative contracts obligating the buyer and the seller to transact at a set price and predetermined time. The clearing house provides this guarantee through a process in which gains and losses accrued on a daily basis are converted into actual cash losses and credited or debited to the account holder. This process, known as mark to market, uses the average of the final few trades of the day to calculate a settlement price. This settlement price is then used to determine whether a gain or loss has been incurred in a futures account in the time span between the previous day's settlement and the current. The gains and losses are based on the last settlement value. The price of all future contracts are based off the underlying asset, which in this instance will be a currency instrument. Currency futures contract. In the context of international finance, the derivative instruments like futures and options come in handy as one of the tools to hedge the risk in exchange rate movements. These are known as currency futures or currency options. A currency futures contract is an agreement to buy or sell a standardized quantity of specific foreign currency at a future date at a price agreed between two parties. Financial futures is a binding contract of a standardized nature interlocking both buyer and seller into a particular rate. Financial futures contracts includes futures contracts for interest rates and currencies, a financial instrument created in the form of financial derivatives to transfer the risk attributable on account of volatility in exchange conversion prices of different set of currencies is known as currency future contract. Currency future. Currency future is a contractual agreement between a buyer and a seller of a particular foreign currency for the purchase and sale of it at a specific future date with agreed quantity at a predetermined price. A currency future, also known as an FX future or a foreign exchange future, is a futures contract to exchange one currency for another at a specified date in the future at a price that is fixed on the purchase date. See foreign exchange derivative. A currency future contract binds both the parties of the contract to fulfill the terms of the contract in any circumstances except legal restrictions imposed by one of the government later on. Currency figures. Currency future is one of the tool available to hedge the risk faced by firm on account of transactions entered into with other party in other country. Features of futures contracts. First one, organized exchanges. Unlike forward contracts which are traded in an over-the-counter market, futures are traded on organized exchanges with a designated physical location where trading takes place. This provides a ready liquid market in which futures can be bought and sold at any time like in a stock market. A current Organized exchange, a securities marketplace where purchasers and sellers regularly gather to trade securities according to the formal rules adopted by the exchange. Second one, standardization. In the case of forward currency contracts, the amount of commodity to be delivered and the maturity date are negotiated between the buyer and seller and can be tailor-made to buyer's requirements. In a futures contract, both these are standardized by the exchange on which the contract is traded. Standardization is a framework of agreements to which all relevant parties in an industry or organization must adhere to ensure that all processes associated with the creation of a good or performance of a service are performed within set guidelines. Third one, clearing house. The exchange acts as a clearing house to all contracts struck on the trading floor. For instance, a contract is struck between A and B. Upon entering into the records of the exchange, this is immediately replaced by two contracts, one between A and the clearing house and another between B and the clearing house. A clearing house is a financial institution formed to facilitate the exchange of payments, securities, or derivative transactions. The clearing house stands between two clearing firms. Margins. Like all exchanges, only members are allowed to trade in futures contracts on the exchange. Others can use the services of the members as brokers to use this instrument. Thus, an exchange member can trade on his own account as well as on behalf of a client. A subset of the members is the clearing members or members of the clearing house, and non-clearing members must clear all their transactions through a clearing member. Margin is the money borrowed from a broker to purchase an investment and is the difference between the total value of investment and the loan amount. Margin trading refers to the practice of using borrowed funds from a broker to trade a financial asset which forms the collateral for the loan from the broker. Marking to market. The exchange uses a system called marking to market, where at the end of each trading session all outstanding contracts are repriced at the settlement price of that trading session. This would mean that some participants would make a loss while others would stand to gain. The exchange adjusts this by debiting the margin accounts of those members who made a loss and crediting the accounts of those members who have gained. Mark to market is a method of measuring the fair value of accounts that can fluctuate over time, such as assets and liabilities. Mark to market aims to provide a realistic appraisal of an institution's or company's current financial situation based on current market conditions. Actual delivery is rare. In most forward contracts, the commodity is actually delivered by the seller and is accepted by the buyer. Forward contracts are entered into for acquiring or disposing of a commodity in the future for a gain at a price known today. Actual delivery refers to the surrender of control and possession of property by the vendor and the assumption of possession by the vendee. In contrast to this, in most futures markets, actual delivery takes place in less than 1% of the contracts traded. Futures are used as a device to hedge against price risk and as a way of betting against price movements rather than a means of physical acquisition of the underlying asset. To achieve this, most of the contracts entered into are nullified by a matching contract in the opposite direction before maturity of the first. Advantages of future contracts. Opens the market to investors. Future contracts are useful for risk tolerant investors. Investors get to participate in markets they would otherwise not have access to. Stable margin requirements. Margin requirements for most of the commodities and currencies are well established in the futures market. Thus, a trader knows how much margin he should put up in a contract. A maintenance margin is set after the initial purchase. The Federal Reserve Regulation T sets this requirement at 25%, although many brokerage firms require more, such as 30% to 40%. No time decay involved. In options, the value of assets declines over time and severely reduces the profitability for the trader. This is known as time decay. A futures trader does not have to worry about time decay. Time decay is a measure of the rate of decline in the value of an options contract due to the passage of time. High liquidity. Most of the futures markets offer high liquidity, especially in case of currencies, indexes, and commonly traded commodities. This allows traders to enter and exit the market when they wish to. High liquidity means that a company can easily meet its short term debts, while low liquidity implies the opposite and that a company could imminently face bankruptcy. Fifth one, simple pricing. Unlike the extremely difficult Black-Scholes model based options pricing, futures pricing is quite easy to understand. It's usually based on the cost of carry model, under which the futures price is determined by adding the cost of carrying to the spot price of the asset. In short, the price of a futures contract will be equal to the spot price plus the net cost incurred in carrying the asset till the maturity date of the futures contract. Disadvantages of futures contract. First one, no control over future events. One common drawback of investing in futures trading is that you don't have any control over future events. Natural disasters, unexpected weather conditions, political issues, etc. can completely disrupt the estimated demand supply equilibrium. Second one, leverage issues. High leverage can result in rapid fluctuations of futures prices. The prices can go up and down daily or even within minutes. The leverage offered by futures contracts is both an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage involves the sometimes fast movement of futures prices. Third one, expiration dates. Future contracts involve a certain expiration date. The contracted prices for the given assets can become less attractive as the expiration date comes nearer. Due to this, sometimes a futures contract may even expire as a worthless investment. The actual term expiration date refers to the last date a food should be eaten or used. Last means last. Proceed at your own risk. Difference between forwards and futures contract. Forwards contract. Essentially, contracts involve only the buyer and the seller. Both the parties in forwards contract have necessarily to perform the contract. Third one, there is no payment of any initial margins in forwards contract. Fourth one, in forward contract, the maturity and size of the contract may be customized. Settlement takes place only on the date of maturity on forwards contract. Credit or counterparty risk is high in forwards contract. Markets for forward contracts are not very liquid. In forward contracts, physical delivery takes place on the maturity date. Futures contract. Futures contract is traded through an exchange. Buyer, seller, and exchange are involved. Futures contract need not necessarily culminate in delivery of the underlying. To trade in futures contract, one has to become a member of the exchange by paying the initial margin and maintain a variable margin account too with the futures exchange. The maturity and size of contracts are standardized in futures contract. In futures contract, settlement is on a daily basis on all the outstanding contracts. Next one, the futures exchange takes care of credit or counterparty risk. Futures contracts are highly liquid and can be closed out easily. A forward is similar to a futures contract in that it specifies as the future delivery of an underlying asset at an agreed price. However, forwards differ from futures in several ways. Purpose. Forward contracts Futures contract settlement is on a daily basis on all the outstanding contracts. Thank you.